The speaker is Vilmos Lorincz, who's the Managing Director of Data Products at Lloyds Bank. Vilmos is currently the leader in data products for Lloyds Bank's group across their commercial bank. He's responsible for strategy, roadmap, and delivery. In previous roles, he's worked in advanced analytics, technology, data services across the UK, Nordics, Central Europe, and Asia. He's an active member of the international data community, and he regularly shares thoughts on the evolving data economy and contributing to frameworks, to standards, which we all need, and how to deploy AI in an ethical way. So if you could give him a big welcome. Vilmos, I welcome you to the stage. Good luck. Thank you.
Hello. Okay. First test passed. Good morning, everyone, and it's a true pleasure to be here today. And thanks for the warm introduction, Pritesh. So yes, indeed, I do data. I run a business called Data Products at Lloyds Banking Group. And what that means is that I, on a day-to-day basis, look at the different assets that Lloyds Banking Group has and constantly think about, so how we process, how we transform all this raw material into outputs that create value and solve business for our commercial clients. So that's what I do as a job. And so next, will it work? The clicker is still not doing. Could you guys, any chance you can? Okay, fine, it works. So that's what I do as a job, and then a brief context and overview on, where do I do that? So Lloyds Banking Group is the national champion in financial services for the UK, which means we are the #1 retail bank and #1 consumer finance business. So we have more than 25 million retail customers, and we have roughly 25% market share in all the retail and consumer finance product businesses. We also have a sizable wealth management business. We are a top 3 to 5 commercial bank, and that's where I work. So we have 1 million plus businesses in the business banking space, which is up to a few £1 million revenue. We have 100,000 plus SME clients, and we have 10,000 plus clients in the 50 and 100 million plus pounds revenue and up, and institutions. So a huge group, both on the retail and the commercial side. And on top of that, we are also a top 3 to 5 insurer in the country. And just a little bit about the UK, not the economy, but the data economy. So the UK data market is a top 3 data market globally. And the regulator and the government created a national data strategy a little bit less than a year ago. And the #1 objective and mission for that is to unlock value from data for the whole economy. So that's a pro-growth point. And the #2 objective for this national data strategy is to create a trusted and secure data regime, which is a pro-security, pro-privacy point. I think that gives you an anchor on sort of the environment I live and work in. I'm conscious that I was asked to provide an international perspective. So just zooming out from the UK for a second, there are 2 call-outs on this side. The first one is very much a speed of change point. So if you think about all the organizations you know and work with, how many of those are commercializing data in a formal, structured way as of today? You can all come up with your answers, but I guess it would not be anywhere near close to 50%. And it doesn't really matter whether we get there by 2026 or whether we get there by 2027, but it's all about getting from a very low base into a very different environment where monetizing and commercializing data is the way to do business. And then the second point is more of a scale point, more of an impact point. So the view from Accenture is that 2030 it will be a $3.6 trillion opportunity. Now, to put that into perspective, I mentioned the UK economy. It's the 5th largest economy in the world after Germany. It's roughly that size, right? So it's sort of a 3 percentage point-ish uplift at a global GDP level, the data opportunity we are talking about. And then that takes me into the sort of the core of the story, which is what are the shaping forces for this data economy? How these dynamics are playing out? And we have 2 key actors. The first one is what I call the maturing corporate, and then the other one is the awakening customer. So the corporate is looking to use more and more data, more and more sophisticated technology to do more and more automated decisions, as Pritesh mentioned. And then we have the consumer on the other side who goes like, oh, wait a minute, but where all this data is coming from, how is generated? Is it what I do? So then whose data is it? And how am I kept informed or have a say in what's being done with that data? How can we make sure that it's the right outcomes for me? And that's why sort of the third part of the story is the balancing act, right? So it's regulation, it's governance, and very importantly, it's ethics, because this space is moving so fast that you can't regulate it to the decimal point. There is no chance of doing that. So a lot of it will come down to ethics, and the success in ethics for the corporate will be the make or break point whether we get to that sort of 3 percentage point uplift. Right. So then that sets the scene, and getting into the maturing corporate. So there are 3 things to talk about here. The first one is just the competitive environment that defines the reality of the corporate. And the first thing I want to call out there is data-driven. So this is, a lot of it is how the corporate thinks about data. And a lot of it is how the chief data and analytics officer function matured in the last 5-6 years. You would struggle to find a large organization which would not have data-driven as a board level priority. And that wasn't the case even just like 5-6 years ago. So organizations embedding data into the way they work, and they start to think data. The AI point is more on the do side. So how we then do something, okay, that we are thinking about it, but how we do with it. We're going to hear loads of presentations and different perspectives on the use cases. I'll give you a few examples in a second. And then the final point is the ecosystem, which is bringing together think data and do data in a future context. And the point around ecosystem is the era and the time of walled gardens is over, right? So whatever you want to do with data, you have to design that effort so that it works and that works so that it operates and is successful in an ecosystem context where it just connects to others. On the existing priorities, so a lot of this effort is focusing on, so how do I make the biggest impact? How I drive my core business? So just as an example, on the customer experience side, we use machine learning models to identify in application processes if a customer is financially vulnerable. We feed more than 100 different attributes from various systems into that decisioning model so that we can make sure that we provide the right treatment and the right outcome for the customer. On the cost and efficiency side, again, for a few years now, we are forecasting our current account balances, our savings balances, our loans balances, which then informs our treasury hedging policies by machine learning algorithms. So it's not just the customer side, but it's also operational planning, decision-making use cases where you can use AI. And again, we have a chatbot, which is both of a mixed example. It helps with customer experience, but it also helps with operational cost and efficiency. And many other organizations are doing that. So these are all use cases which support the core business. But there are emerging priorities, and that's where I work. So I'll just give you 2 examples on the data product side. One of the largest products we manufactured for our clients is from our retail transaction data. It's more than 10 billion rows of data, and we help our B2C retail industry clients to learn about their customers, right? As I mentioned, we have 25 million customers that generate 50 million transactions a day. And from that, we can provide a lot of information for other corporates to make better decisions for their customers. We do it in a very safe and privacy way where no one's data can be exposed, but it's unlocking value from data. I can give you another example on commercial transaction data. We are manufacturing a carbon calculator product, and that is targeting commercial clients. It's used, we are using commercial transaction data as input for that, and it helps companies to understand their retail footprint. It helps companies to make ESG decisions. That's the value add. We are just using a different type of raw material. And digital ID, one very brief point on that. When I talk ecosystem, if you think about what digital ID can become, it can become way more than just this is who I am, this is my name, this is when I was born, and this is my country of residence. It can become a preference store around everything that you want to be done or not done with your data. And that digital ID, if you fed it into the data ecosystem, you can start to see how those automated decisions done by AI can be driven by the customers through vote around what is done or not done with their data. And this is pretty much the environment that we are heading into. Very briefly on the data ecosystem and how it works. So in the middle, you can see different types of products that can be manufactured by large companies like us. So it can be an insight platform, it can be a data science platform, it can have data clean room matching capabilities, which allows other corporates, your clients, to bring their own data into your environment to do even more sophisticated analysis. And for large players like us, you can anchor those platforms. But again, Pritish mentioned small data. There are other rails that are emerging for smaller companies, and these are the external data platforms and the data marketplaces where everyone can start to distribute their assets. And it all comes together into an ecosystem. My personal view on that in roughly in a decade's time, data will be flowing across organizations pretty much in the same way we are sending emails. And it's the question around how we get there. And the most important player in that how we get there is the customer, because it's the customer's judgment, it's ultimately the customer's data, and we need to make this ecosystem work in a way where the customer likes it. And I'll explain why that is mission critical. But there are three trends that the awakening customers is experiencing. The first one, which starts with the 5-star experience, that's not going to be new news to anyone in 2022, I believe. That is the digitization trend, because the digitization trend is, in essence, is the key engine behind data generation. The reason we have this amount of data is because everything has gone digital, and that data is generated constantly from all our interactions. So the expectation is everything is real time, everything is seamless, everything is on my mobile, and everything is personalized. That's the generic expectation from the customer, and that has been sort of growing and developing for more than a decade now. But the other thing, and that's the middle trend on the side, is the customer started to realize, like, hold on a second, if this amount of stuff is done with my data, how do I get some control over it? It's fascinating to see how that awareness is growing. When I was working on GDPR compliance 5-6 years ago, we tried to measure the awareness of the customer, and it was a fraction of a percentage point in the UK economy, which, as I mentioned, is one of the most advanced ones, that people just were not aware. If you compare with that, what's the case today? 5 million people are using open banking. And So that means that they are making conscious decisions whether they allow some players to access their data or on their behalf. And it's not just that. Fintechs don't love it, and that's not the point, but there is sort of a 90 days re-authentication process there. So the customer is being conditioned to open or close the tap, right? You constantly managing that flow. Do I want this player to do something with my data or do I not? And then that goes into the trust piece, which is if I don't know what's happening with that data, and if I'm conditioned to, and if I live in a world where I just open and close the tap anytime, I will do that if I don't like something. We do a huge amount of research in this space. Banks are well positioned. That's what we hear. Also, governments and healthcare providers. But for example, all the social media companies, they lost a lot of trust from the customer because of the lack of transparency and some of the data issues that are quite well known in their data management processes. So, in essence, the summary of the trust trend is no data, no business in the data economy, because the customer from whom all this data is coming from is just gonna close the tap. And that's what takes me to ethics, right? So to keep that trust and to build that trust and to nurture that trust with the customer, you need to do this in an ethical way. And the really interesting things about ethics is that ethics is really who you are, and that's very hard to regulate. So that's why we've seen regulation on privacy. We've seen regulation coming out in the EU on how particular AI risks. But there is no upcoming regulation on ethics because, as I mentioned, that's down to who you are. But what's happening in ethics is a well thought through approach to teach or sort of self-educate the corporate to be well placed in the data economy. So the first thing is around principles and corporate values, and there is international guidance available on that. The OECD has done it. The IEEE has done it. I worked with them on that. But if you read the words, I'm not going to spell them out. But if you read the words that are up on the slide, those are the fundamental statements that needs to be true, right? Those need to be to your starting point when you want to do something with data. So once you have that and you sort of set your mind on how you want to do it and what are you trying to achieve, then comes the governance framework. And what I have in the middle there is the framework of the Responsible AI Institute. It's I work with them as an advisory board member. It's a non-profit. That's why I'm very happy to call it out. But the point there is, that ethics beyond principles have very important things around, like, so what do you look at, right? How you look at transparency, explainability, security, etc. And then finally, the third step for the corporate is to embed that into your processes. So it needs to be embedded into product development, into commercialization, into product management. And my personal view, again, that in a few years' time, when we get to that data flowing across organizations like email, this governance framework, which is highly manual today, and need to be automated as well. But that's definitely next steps for us as well. But we are thinking about it. So that takes me pretty much to the end of my presentation, and just playing back the three key messages I would like you to take away and think about. So the first one is it's the customer's data. You are custodians of it. So think about the customer's needs and how you treat the customer ethically and fairly, and also how you are transparent with them so that they know what you are doing with their data. The second one is around then, embrace technology, try and get the most out of AI. Feel free to fail, but fail in a safe way. So try to be efficient and ethical at the same time. Without ethics, it's not going to work. And the final point is whatever proposition or value adding mechanism you design, think ecosystem, because it will have to operate in an interconnected world. Thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation. And don't know if you're going to do Q&A, but if we don't do it on stage, I'm available and would love to talk to each and every one of you about any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We do have time for questions. Does anybody have a question? Surely someone must have one question. So underneath each of your tables, there's a little recording device. And the table which asks the least number of questions has to pay a penalty at the end of the day. The table which asks the most number of questions gets a prize. See, this is collecting data and incentivizing. Know your customer. Nobody has a customer? Nobody has a question? Ah, we have one over there. My wife said I needed to lose some weight. So.
Hi, yeah, my question is about the protocol normalization. When you exchange data between parties, is there any approach to have standardized protocol to be used currently?
The answer is no, because data models are widely differ between organizations, and I don't think it has come to a point where dot interconnectivity talks about protocols. It's more at a level where organizations are trying to figure out the framework around it. So, what is the lawful basis for exchanging that data? Are you connecting personally identifying the information with another one, and then how you make sure that you have entitlements from the customer to do that? So a lot when it comes to PII data, it's more about that. And when it comes to more like operational data, then it's just you make it work. There's a huge diversity of systems. So you figure out the data model that allows you to come to that joined up data set.
Okay, so do you think that there would be more of solutions like data producers will be providing all of the interfaces that you'll be integrating with, and that will be the bridge between data lakes and all of those data processors?
Yeah, so absolutely. So if you think about sort of the stack logic that need to work for this, it works something like this, right? So you have places where you store the data, and then when you provide those environments, then you want to provide different analytical languages that allows you to query that data. Sort of in the next layer, then you have all sort of applications, custom-built applications that are available in that environment. And then you have sort of the connectivity layer wrapped around it. But this is happening anyway. So if you think about cloud, if you think about data integration, so there's a huge amount of work that's happening, which will just make data more interoperable from an available technology perspective.
Okay, last question with this topic. Will that require a new human resources to just handle that, or just software engineers will be enough?
So I think it will require some rethinking. So on the technical plumbing and wiring side, yes, it's going to be largely software engineers and people making it happen. But to my last point around how you make it part of your full, your end-to-end business, right? So when you design a product, how you have people in the design, visual design, the design thinking space who start to think about the implications. How you have people who start to think data end to end in the product development cycle. How then it's second nature for everyone to think about the privacy controls and the ethics first mindset, and then how you run and operate that governance framework efficiently. I think that that's not necessarily a particular new type of rule, but it's a huge mindset changing for a lot of people involved in the process.
All right, makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks very much.